We're now going to turn our attention to a key error handling operator that's defined in RxJava's Observable class. In general, these error handling operators handle errors, typically exceptions, that occur in the context of a chain of operators that are related to an observable. We'll be talking here about the onErrorReturn operator. OnErrorReturn can be used to end the flow with a last item that's returned by a function. This function is passed as a parameter, and it will return a value that will be emitted along with a regular onComplete signal if the current observable signals an onError event, indicating that some error or exception has occurred. OnErrorReturn returns a new observable that will fall back upon its item supplier parameter if and when an error occurs. This operator swallows exceptions so that they aren't propagated any further up the call chain or the call stack. Here's an example we'll take a look at when we get to the case study at the end of this lesson. This example is going to use the observable from callable factory method to do some computation that will end up throwing an arithmetic exception. We, of course, have subscribed this to run in the scheduler's computation thread pool. However, we put an onErrorReturn operator in here with an error handler that we'll also look at in more detail. And what that error handler parameter is going to do is it's going to convert the arithmetic exception to the return value of 0. And then that value will then be propagated to the map operator, which will go ahead and multiply some big fraction by 0, which will not have quite the same effect as having an exception propagate out of the scope of that chain of calls on the observable. Project Reactor has a flux class with an onErrorResume operator that works essentially the same as RxJava's observable onErrorReturn. Again, I'm not really sure why they chose slightly different names to do more or less the same thing, but that's one of the fun quirks you have when you try to go back and forth between Project Reactor and its Flux class and RxJava and its observable class. Java Completable Futures and the Completable Futures framework has an exceptionally method that behaves very much like onErrorReturn or onErrorResume. So it's good to know that you can get more or less the same effect of being able to handle these exceptions that occur in asynchronous chains or streams without having the exceptions propagate into some strange scope. So that's the end of our discussion of some of the key error handling operators you'll find in RxJava's observable class, as well as comparing and contrasting them with error handling operators defined in other functional and reactive streams frameworks.